Okay, you're on.
I'm on now?
Yep. Well, just right now.
Okay. I thought maybe you saw me clean my glasses.
Well, that was going.
Oh.
They didn't see that, so
I
it's okay.
can't see my notes.
Okay, so before we start, I'll tell you. Last time, did you read through the comments of who was on and?
Me?
Jamie was on and Ashley was on. Okay, when we're done, I'll read you the comments
Oh,
of everybody.
good. I love the comments, you kids. Keep them coming.
Yeah, and then if you want to say, like, if anyone gets on and say, I'm here, so I can tell Grandma who's listening. So, turn that. Okay, so we have 5th grade job pokey paper route.
Okay, I think I kind of left off when we were moving to Pocatello. The war started, Dad got a better job, we moved to Pocatello. And I was in the 5th grade. And so that's when I had to get those glasses, and I also told that story. So when I was in the late 5th grade, early 6th, I'm not sure when, I got a paper route and carried papers all over the southwest end of town. And a lot of times it was dark and cold and snowy, and it was very hard. But I loved the money. I loved having a little bit of money. And really, from that time on, I basically worked as much as I could.
Do you remember how much you got paid for the paper route?
I think it was $1.25 a week.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah. It was enough for several candy bars. And so then we went through the 6th grade. We went to Irving School, the 7th and 8th grade. And it was a 22-block walk, and we walked it every morning, ran home at noon, ran back, walked home at night.
Oh, wow.
So we really got our exercise. It was probably really good for us. I'm forgetting my notes. I can't remember.
I can tell you. Well, and I want to tell you that right now, Carissa and Jenny are on and watching.
Hi, Carissa. Hi, Jenny.
So, okay, let's see. So I have Mutual, Girls Camp.
Oh, okay, that's what I wanted to tell. When we came back to Pocatello, we started going to church, to Mutual. Not church, Mutual. It was on one of the evenings, probably Tuesday night. And we loved it. We loved it. We'd walk down, go to church, walk home. And we also got involved in some of the activities. And one of the girls that I remember especially and was so nice and we liked her so well was Marjorie Higgins. And Marjorie had had polio as a youngster. I think that's what it was. And her back was kind of hunched up and she was kind of crippled. But she was just the nicest person ever. We invited her to come over to our house and play and things like that, but she never did. She lived out of town, had to ride the school bus. Anyway, we went into Irving and went to school there 2 years, and then we started high school at Pocatello High School. And we went to the first semester, got our report cards, and surely it wasn't going to work for her to keep going to school. And so she quit school. And Mom made a deal with her that if she'd keep the house clean, Mom would pay her a little bit. Well, this went on for maybe a year. And then Shirley met Chris Norgard and got married. But I want to go back and tell you, at the end of that first semester in high school, 9th grade, Esther, my step-grandmother, Esther Ziegler, was alone. Grandpa had died of cancer, and she was alone out on that ranch. She didn't like being alone and, you know, snowy. She was a school teacher, so she went to town every day, which was good for her probably. But it was hard to live alone. And so she decided to have us granddaughters come and live with her. So I was the first, and I went and lived there no, Shirley was first. She went to Grace for a semester. I don't know. No, I don't think she did. I think I'm the only one out of our household that went. And I loved it. It was fun. I was like a big fish in a little puddle. But it was a lot of fun, and I remember I got asked to the dances and went to the dances, and it was just a lot of fun down there. I kind of started blooming a little down there, I think. Anyway, I came back, and during the 7th and 8th grade, I had babysat a lot. I mean, almost every Saturday night I had a job, so I earned money that way. And then I got a job at the bowling alley, and they called it a duck pin bowling alley because they were smaller pins and the ball was smaller. And it was up above Votes Sheet and Metal Works on West Center. Anyway, one night the guy had roll a ball down the alley and knock the pins over, and we would jump down and set up the pins and then jump back up onto our little perch back there. There was no machine that set up the pins. I was the machine. Anyway, one night, I had my glasses in so I could see this guy, and he got his ball, and I was hurrying and setting up pins, and I looked up just in time to see him look right at me and roll that ball down the alley as hard as he could. And he hit me on the leg, and I climbed out of that pit and went down to the boss and said I quit and walked home. And I was glad to be through with that job because I got off at midnight and walked home alone through town, and it was probably 9 blocks to my house. Boy, you wouldn't let your young daughter do that now.
You definitely would not.
Anyway, I started back to Pokey High in my sophomore year, and it was just kind of different. I liked everything more. And there was this boy that I thought was so handsome. His name was Bob Thompson. And so we went out to a dance with the other mutual girls. We all went out to a dance at a church across town. And he asked me to dance, so I go out there. We did a square dance where you line up in 2 rows and then you do-si-do and do all this stuff. Bounce out and meet them and bow and come back and so on and so forth. I had worn a formal, which she wore formals. It was green and gold ball, gold and green ball. And I had a velvet turquoise little headband. It was on a elastic, and then the velvet showed up here. So I wore that. And we came out from our corners, and I fell down.
Oh, no.
I sat right on my bottom. And this thing I had on my hair came down and caught on my glasses. I was sitting there with that on my glasses. I was so embarrassed. I knew my social life was ruined forever. Anyway, I don't remember getting up or going home. I just remember sitting, oh no. So I had fun in high school. I dated a lot of people and had a lot of fun. Have I written anything down?
Well, I wanted to tell you that Jenny said she loves that jacket on you, which it does look very pretty.
Thank you.
And Krista says hi, and Ben and Poonj are both on right now.
Ben, you need to come and choose a wedding plate. Come over Friday night or Saturday morning and get a plate so I can pretend I give it to you at the shower.
And then Jenny said Marjorie is Robert's aunt, and she passed away about 8 years ago.
I knew that.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have on here, Marjorie Girls Camp, freshman.
Oh, Girls Camp.
Girls Camp.
Girls Camp. It was up on the hill. What's it called? On Kimport, or not Kimport, on Scout Mountain. It was a Girl Scout camp up there, or some kind of a camp. So we go up and they had like a tent house. It had the tent canvas roof, and then it was a wooden frame with the floor and came up like that, and then the canvas took the rest. And they had pack rats up there. in the middle of the night, we'd hear this, and we'd get up and look, and flashlights, and these little rats would run out. So one night around the fire, we had watermelon, and it was delicious. And they gave you a piece of watermelon, and you ate it. Well, I got it all over my mouth. And when we were finished, we went into bed. And in the middle of the night, I woke up, and there was a pack rat sitting on my face, licking watermelon off of my face. I about died. I about come unglued. And I jumped out of bed and screamed, and the girls all got up, and the leader got up.
Oh.
And a woman I babysat for all the time gave me a pair of brown boots that come up to my knees. Oh, I thought I was the height of fashion in those boots, and I wore them up at camp. And so one morning I woke up and the boots were chewed to pieces.
Oh, shoot.
Those rats had come in and chewed the leather, the little varmints. Made me mad.
I bet. That's sad.
Anyway, I went to Mutual a lot, and I started going to church a little bit then. And I loved the feelings like at girls' camp when we'd have our testimony meeting, and all the girls would get up, and I'd get these nice warm feelings. And I thought, I really believe in this church and liked it. And at that time, Peggy was very active in church. She was in the the young women's, what they call a young women's program now. And she earned her Golden Gleaner Award, which was the big deal in that day. And I wish she had kept going to church. Maybe I would have if she had. Anyway, as I said, she's 5 years older than me, so we didn't run together or anything. So when Shirley was 16, she was really at a loose end in her life. And Mom introduced her to this milkman that she had come to know. I need a Kleenex. There's one right behind you. Anyway, my mother knew this milkman. My Aunt Lydian, Aunt Dean, started a little restaurant on North Main, and she named it Stinkies because she had gotten that nickname somehow, somewhere. Anyway, she had little Disney-looking painted skunks around on the walls and this and that, so Stinkies, and it was kind of a hamburger joint. And this milkman would come in every morning around 8 and have his breakfast. Mom got acquainted with him. He was 26 years old, 10 years older than Shirley. Wow. He had a player piano at his house. And so he had these piano rolls, which we had from that piano in soda that we had. And so Mom set it up with Chris that he would come over to our house Friday night and bring rolls that we didn't have so that we could play the piano. And then she made sure everybody was gone except Shirley. She even made Neil go, so I don't know where we all went, but we all left. So Shirley was there alone on Friday night. And Chris came. And they got acquainted and played some piano, I suppose. I don't know. Anyway, he asked her to go to the movies the next night. He didn't deliver milk on Saturday, so he could be out a little later on Friday night. So they went to the movies Friday night, and he asked her to marry him.
Oh, wow.
And she said yes.
Oh.
And they got married the very next Friday.
Oh, my goodness.
Can you believe it?
No.
And the wedding... She couldn't believe it either when she woke up to the romance was gone. But anyway, they got married out at his parents' house out of town, out of Tyhee. And after the wedding, and we all had dessert, I suppose, and I know I had on a new gray dress with a scarf that I thought was so beautiful. Anyway, and I was, I must have been 15. Come to think of it, because Shirley was 16, so I was 15. So Don and Peggy decided that they should go to the Delita and dance. They had dances there on Friday nights. So they asked me to go, and boy, was I thrilled to go to a big grown-up dance like the Delita. So we went to the Delita, and Dawn asked somebody, she gets asked, they're all dancing, and I'm standing by the wall. And this guy came up, and I would call him a nerd in these days. In those days, he was a kooky guy. And he had on glasses, and he just wasn't with it, you know what I mean? Anyway, he asked me to dance. I didn't know how to say no or what to say, so I danced with him. So we're dancing along, and he said, I'd like to take you home after the dance. I've got a car, I'll drive you home. And I said, oh no, I can't do that. I came here with my brother and sister, and I have to go home with them. No, you can go home with me. No, I can't go home with you. And about that time, Don came waltzing by with this girl, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, Don, I'm your sister, and you're going to take me home. Tell him. And Don said, never saw her before in my life, and waltzed away. I could have killed him. And I didn't go home with that man. He was old. I'll bet he was 18 or 19. For me, that was old, you know. Anyway, that was a fun adventure. I've laughed about it a lot.
That's funny.
And high school, the only other incident I remember that wasn't just going to class and having friends, and I was in pep club, which I was very excited about, and we performed at all of the games and things. But anyway, Mary Ellen O'Donnell, my best friend, was in drama. And so they were rehearsing for a play. She wanted me to come and wait for her so we could walk home together. So I went to wait for her. Everybody left except Mary Ellen and I. And Mary Ellen had loitered on purpose. She said, I want to climb up the ladder and get on the catwalk and look down. Oh, that'd be fun. It was only 90 feet. So we get this big ladder. It was on wheels and hooked to the ceiling. We rolled it over there, and she climbed up and looked, and oh, this is neat, and climbed down and said, okay, you go. Okay, I started climbing up the ladder. I got about 3/4 of the way up and looked down. Don't ever look down. I couldn't move. I could not move. I was terrified, and I was hanging on with all my might and main, and she said, come on down. No, I can't move. I'm scared. Well, she went and got the janitor, Joe Olive. And Joe climbed the ladder, got a hold of me, and brought me down the ladder. So that was my only big adventure in high school. I wasn't in any clubs or anything because I got a job at S.H. Kress, a dime store. It'd be like Shopko or one of those now, but there were counters, and we stood behind in the counter. It was a open rectangle. We stood inside and waited on people. You actually got service in those days in those stores. Anyway, I had to be there every day right after school and all day Saturday. It was at that time that I started buying most of my own clothes. And I remember I fell in love with this maroon gabardine, very nice. It was $40,
Oh, wow.
which most coats were 10, 12, 15. Well, I was in love with the gabardine. And so I laid it away at JCPenney and paid $2 a week on it until I was able to get it. And I made about $16 a week working at Kress. So that was good. It bought me lots of sweaters and things that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Okay, so Jenny asked, was Shirley the first one in your family to get married?
Yes.
Yes. And Jenny, or Haley said, I love your sweater, and what a stinker brother.
Don was always playing tricks on us. So when I was a senior in high school, another big event happened, New Year's Eve. And so in November, before that New Year's Eve, I was working at Kress, and I was behind the men's sock counter that day. And so this woman came in, a very pretty woman, and looked and looked and looked at the socks and looked, and finally I got tired of her and went over there and because I had asked her if I could help her, and she said no. So I went back over and I said, you know, maybe I could help you choose some socks. How old a person are you buying these socks for? She says, well, he's my son. He's a senior in high school, and it's going to be his birthday. And I said, oh, I go to high school. There was only one high school in Pocatello. I said, I go to high school. I bet I know him. What's his name? And she said the words, Doyle Chatterton. I said, no, I don't know him, but I had a girlfriend that went out with him a couple of times. Anyway, I helped her choose the socks. She left. I forgot about it. It was just something that happened. Yeah. So New Year's came, and I didn't have a date. Bad. Finally, a few days before, this person named Glenn Lusk called me and asked me to go to a New Year's Eve party with him. And so I said, okay, I'll go. He said, I'll pick you up at 7. Okay. So 7 o'clock came, and Glenn knocked on the door, and I went out, and we got in the car in the back seat, and there was another couple in the front seat. Well, I knew the girl, Eva Evans. She was in my class at school, but I didn't know who the boy was. And Glenn said, Dorothy, this is my friend Doyle Chatterton and Eva Evans. And I said, oh, Doyle Chatterton, how do you like your socks? I helped your mom pick out your birthday socks. Doyle was a man of few words, and he just picked up his leg and showed me and said, I got them on. Anyway, we went to the party, and it was fun. I don't know, we talked, laughed, and the men were drinking beer, and the women weren't. And so at midnight, somebody, you know, the whistles blew, and we would kiss our date at that point. Somebody said, let's kiss all the girls. So one by one, the guys came over and kissed me. Well, Doyle Chatterton came over and kissed me. And it was like, what? Like the bells rang and the whistles blew. And I stepped back and looked at him, and he looked at me, and he grabbed me and kissed me again. And that time it was even more wonderful. And we looked at each other again, and he started to get a hold of me again, and my date grabbed my hand and said, that's about a dang enough, and pulled me away. Well, a little while later, my date crawled into the bathtub and went to sleep. He drank too much beer. And Doyle's date, Eva, had fallen asleep on the couch. So Doyle asked me to dance. And I don't know where all the other kids were. They were around there somewhere. So we went out into the kitchen and started to dance. And we danced, and we danced. And we danced till about 4 in the morning. Wow. And at one point, I looked at him and I thought, you're just like my mother. I'm just going to have you in my life all my life. Words to that effect. I don't know what I said. But I just felt like we knew each other, that we'd known each other for a long time, that he was my guy. I really felt that way. Love at first sight. Anyway, we were going to go home. We got in the car, and Doyle took Eva home first. And then he said, get up in the front seat, you two. And it was an old 39 something or other, DeSoto, 39 DeSoto. So we went around and got in the car. Well, I got in the middle, and Glenn on this side, and Doyle was driving. So Glenn put his arm around my shoulders. And Doyle grabbed my hand, and we held hands down under the seat where Glenn wouldn't know what we were doing. And so I went home. Glenn took me up to the porch. Anyway, the next day was Sunday, and I was just on pins and needles. I sat right by that telephone all day. No call. I started feeling cheap, like, oh, you went to this dance with one guy and flirted and danced with another one. Oh, dear, you're a bad girl. And he didn't call that day at all. I was so disappointed. Anyway, the next day, I found out that he had a class right before mine. So I thought, I'm going to say hello to him. And so I waited. I went up to the teacher when the class was over, ask her some stupid question so I could linger a little. And then as I started out of the classroom doorway, there came Doyle. And I said, "Hi, Doyle." And he, hello. And I left, he left. That night he called me. And that was the start of a 1.5 year romance. We went together all through that year. And then in the December, his aunt called him and told him his draft number was coming up. The Korean War was on and they were drafting all the young men. And so he and 16 of his best friends went down and enlisted. Some went in the Navy, some in the Air Force, some in the Army. Doyle chose the Air Force. And he had, when he got out of school, he went to radio school at ISU. In the Voltech program, he went to radio school. And so he had that semester behind him. He joined the Air Force and left January 13th. Date burned in my memory.
And what year was this?
1950.
1950, January 13th.
So, no, it was 1951. We met the year 4950, and this was 50 to 51, so in January it would have been 1951. Anyway, he went to basic training in Biloxi, Mississippi, and in May, or the end of April rather, he came home for a furlough. They gave him a furlough, and he was on his way to his place where he had to go, which was Tacoma, Washington. He was going to be at the Air Force Base there. And so he came through Pocatello and spent a week. So Sunday morning early, like 7 or 7:30 in the morning, he came, and Mom was up, and she let him come into my bedroom and wake me up. Shocking. Anyway, he shook me. I woke up. Ah, hello. Probably had bad breath. I don't know. Anyway, we got in the car and drove out to Cherry Springs and sat there and talked. And he said, "Well, are we going to do it?" And I said, "I guess so, if you want to." Okay, so we got married Thursday. That was my proposal.
So no me, you were just
No
sitting.
me, sitting in the car. We went down to Harrison's Jewelers and bought each other a plain gold band, and mine cost $7 and his was $13. Anyway, we got married that Thursday. We got married. He asked me Sunday. He didn't ask me. We decided Sunday, and we got married Thursday. And then we went to Idaho Falls for 2 days. We got married in my home. And at the last minute, I got cold feet. And somebody had given me a $20 bill for I thought, I'm going to take this 20 and run away. I don't want to get married. What if well, I'll just get a divorce if it doesn't work. Silly me. Anyway, we got married. We went to Idaho Falls for our little honeymoon. Stayed at the Bonneville Hotel. It's still there. I don't know if it's still called that. And then Saturday night, they gave us a party at Robin, where he had grown up, at the church. So that started our married life. And I thought I'd tell the rest next week or something.
Yeah.
How long has it been?
It's been, let's see.
20 minutes.
About 20 minutes, yeah. Haley said, back to when you were at the dance, she said, "Where was everyone's parents? Haha. Do you have this story written down? I would love to have a copy of it. It's the best."
Oh, really? I almost didn't tell it. I thought it was inconsequential. No, I don't have it written down.
Well, Haley, one thing I was wondering is if someone wanted to go through and type these stories while they listen to the live video, we could type out the stories that Grandma's telling, and then we could have the stories written down and add them to family history and just have them for people. So if you or anybody is a really good typist, that would be a good job if anyone wants to help out.
That would be nice. Okay, then 20 minutes. I'll go a little while more.
Okay.
Take us to Tacoma.
Do you want to show the pictures of
Oh,
you guys
yes.
while you're?
I don't know how old I was. How do I do this?
Yeah, it's catching up. So, in just a second, I can look on here. Yeah, they can see that. Yep, that's
Okay.
perfect.
And then Mrs. Doyle's picture, and I think he might have been I think this was his senior picture.
Yeah, that's really good.
Now, can you see why I married this guy? Pretty good looking, wasn't he? You know, people thought he looked like John Wayne. I think it was that high forehead. And also Paul Newman. He went to a hamburger place when he was working in Twin Falls. And this girl behind the counter almost fainted. She grabbed the counter and said, Paul Newman, Paul Newman. And he said, I'm not Paul Newman. He has blue eyes. Anyway, he was a very handsome man. Oh, and in high school, take a look. He got voted the kid with the most kissable lips. Anyway, so we got married, and then on Sunday he left and went to Tacoma where he had to go to the Air Force Base. And I worked, at that time I worked at the telephone company, and I gave my notice. And a month later, June 14th, his parents, Roy and Virgie Steele, loaded up what little stuff I had and drove me to Tacoma so that we could have the car there. Roy worked on the railroad, so they rode the train back. And so he drove us up there, and I remember we were approaching Tacoma, and I said, stop, I've got to change my dress before I see him. And they did, what? Are you crazy? Oh, I want to change my dress. Please stop. So they stopped at a gas station, and I took my dress and ran in the bathroom and put it on so I'd be ready to meet my sweet new husband. Silly.
That's cute.
Anyway, we picked him up. He got off for a day or two. We picked him up and went into Tacoma City and started looking for apartments. And we found a couple that I said, oh, okay, they're okay. No, they're in a bad neighborhood. We're not going to live here. And so we went out into this kind of suburb of the city and all the beautiful trees. And it was not far from Point Defiance, which was a big swimming area on the Puget Sound. And we went out and we found this house. No, I went into the grocery store and asked him, do you know of any places for rent around here? And the guy said, yeah, go right through the alley. And there's a big building and it'll be there. And so we went over to that house. Sammy, quit it. Stop. We went over to that house, and Anna Williams, the landlady, rented us the second floor. There were 2 apartments on the second floor, and it was one of those wonderful old homes with a big porch and everything. And we lived there for 18 months while he was in the service. I got a job at Crest immediately. They hired me very quickly. On the next page, do I have any little story about Tacoma?
Do you want me to go through these really quick to make sure you got them all?
Sure.
Okay, so it has church dance bell, work story, Bob Thompson.
That was the dance.
Okay, Shirley Matra, Mary's Donkey. Yes, loved your art class.
Oh,
You
at
talk
high
about
school,
that.
I loved the art class.
And then 90 stage.
What?
90 stage.
90 stage?
Uh-huh.
Oh, the 90-foot ladder.
Oh, the 90-foot
On
ladder.
the
Okay,
stage. I
gotcha.
thought, what is that?
Okay, now on this one we have
Just Tacoma.
Tacoma City, job, apartment, gas stove,
Yeah.
shift work.
Okay. You know, Pocatello was a smaller town then. And when we went to Tacoma, it was a city, a big city. And so I was so thrilled to have that adventure. Anyway, we rented that little apartment. It was furnished, $45 a month. And Monday morning, he got up and went off to work, and I got up and went downstairs and caught the bus into the city part of Tacoma and walked the street. I found the library. That's where I wanted to work at the library so bad because I was such a reader. I read 3-4 books a week, and I loved to read. And I thought, what a deal, I'll work at the library. Well, they said, is your husband in the service here? And I said, yes. And they said, we don't hire servicemen's wives. We just get them trained and they leave. We don't hire them. Now, I could sue for that, get lots of money. Anyway, you can't refuse to hire somebody on those grounds.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went to work back at Chris, and Doyle and I loved to go out to Point Defiance or out to the river, and we would rent a rowboat. And I've got that picture. It's in the living room. You've all seen that, of him rowing me around. And we made some good friends in Tacoma. We had a good time. We made friends. Doyle worked shifts, so he was gone 4 to midnight or 8 to 4 or whatever. And so he wasn't always there. And when he was gone, I would read. We didn't have a TV. That's the canoe that we used to go out in. I weighed 104 pounds in that picture, ladies. Jenny framed that for us and got us. I think it's so neat. So, do I have anything else for Tacoma?
Let's see. Elders.
Oh, the church. I was teaching Sunbeams when I met Doyle, the Sunbeam class. And I went to church and taught and did all that whole year that we dated. But he smoked. He wouldn't go to church. He quit when he was 14 or 15. He probably had the wrong friends. I don't know. Anyway, when we got to Tacoma, I wanted to find the church. And but we never did. It just never happened. One night we were in our apartment and the knock on the door, and we went to the door, and 2 men in suits were standing at the door. And I don't remember if they had badges. I don't think they did. I think they were elders of our ward. Anyway, we invited them in, and they came in and asked us where we were from, talked to us for 2 or 3 minutes, and then handed us an envelope and said, we're building a new church award, and this is your share of the budget. And I opened it and looked at it, and it was $75. Doyle made $167 a month, and I made around $35 a week. So, we were living on not a whole lot of money, and they wanted $75. That was almost double our rent. And so we took the envelope and they left. They didn't tell us where the church was, what time the church started, nothing. They gave us the bill and left. And it really left a sour taste in my mouth. Mm-hmm. And Doyle too, anyway. That was neither here nor there. But that was our only brush with the church when we lived in Tacoma for 18 months. And then he got transferred to Portland, Oregon, and we lived there for 2 years. And Doyle, they had taught him to be a radar operator. So he would sit in front of the radar and watch the needle and everything. And when we got to Portland, they had an office, the Air Force had an office in the local Elks Lodge, I believe it was. And it was right downtown, so he worked downtown in that place. And then they transferred him and a guy named Al Stair into going up and down the little coastal towns in Oregon and recruiting people to go out and stand on the beach or the cliffs overlooking the ocean with binoculars and watch for enemy planes and enemy ships. That's the war climate, and they did. They came close to the U.S. at some point. I don't know. Anyway, when he got that job traveling with Al, they would leave on a Monday morning and come back 2 weeks later on Friday night.
And did you have kids at this time?
What?
Did you have any kids when he was
Oh,
gone?
no. No. We lost 3 babies while we were in Portland. 3 miscarriages.
Well, I didn't know that.
And then I finally got one that I got a doctor that did something, and I was able to have Mark. But I'd like to talk about that separately.
Okay.
So,
let's see, you have Portland Insurance Company.
oh, okay. When we got to Portland, I, needed a job. And I got a job at an insurance company, Phil Grossmeyer Company. And there was this whole 3rd floor of a big office building right downtown. I felt so debonair going to the big office like a regular person. Anyway, I was in the claims department. I remember I made out a check for $104,000, typed it up for the boss to sign one day.
Wow.
But there were probably 30 or 40 women in that room. And I'll tell you a little story. One of the vice presidents, there was the president, Phil Grossmeyer, and then there were several. Well, Mr. Newman was the vice president, and I no sooner got settled in that job till he come out of the offices in the back and came out into our big office and came over to my desk and started asking me questions about my husband and so on. And I answered, I had no idea. And at lunch, one of the girls said, "You watch out for Mr. Newman. He is not a good man. You be careful around him." And so from then on, every time he came out, I was very curt and businesslike. And he finally quit coming out to talk to me. He wanted me to come in his office one day and he could show me something or other. I said, "I'm on a deadline," and didn't go. But there again, in these days, he would have been fired.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't do that. I loved that job though. And I met a really nice person in Portland. She worked where I worked. Her name was Janice Marshoff. While Doyle was on those 2 weeks trips, she and I would go to dinner some nights and do a few things, and I was alone so much in the evening. I started business college. It was the Portland College of Business or something, to learn how to be a good secretary. And I went to that school and got a certificate while I lived there.
Neat.
Yeah, I love Portland. It's a beautiful big city, and it's full of beautiful trees, and the streets are cool. We lived at 3703 Southeast Morrison. So it was a straight shot out from my office. And it was across the Willamette River. And then we moved to 96 something Southeast Stark, which was further out of town. While I was working in Portland, though, that Mr. Newman just had me kind of scared, and I didn't like the situation. So I quit my job and got a job at Coastwise Line, which was a steam company. And I'll tell you one more story. I'll try to make it short. So one day at noon, I was in another department, but at noon they'd have me go run the switchboard, because that's what I did in Pocatello. I knew how, and not many people did, so I'd run the switchboard. And one day, the board lit up, and I answered, "Coastwise Line, may I help you?" And this voice said, "Yes, you can help me. Could you give me the name of a popular Christmas song?" And I thought, oh my gosh, it's Art Linkletter. Art Linkletter was a TV personality, and he would call people all over the country and ask them questions, and if they could answer, he'd give them money. And I thought, I'm on TV. And so I said, of course. And I gave him a name. I think it was "O Come All You Faithful." He said, "Well, could you sing a few bars of that?" And I don't sing. but for money. So I sang a couple of lines of that. And then he said, good, thank you so much. Now could you tell me who publishes that? And I said, sir, this is a steamship company. Is that who you were calling? And he said, what? And I said, it's Coastwise Line. He says, I'm on the Willamette River, and it's a steamship company. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And he said, I need your name. I've got to have your name. So I gave him my name. You weren't suspicious in those days. Anyway, Christmas Eve came, and we're in our little apartment on Southeast Stark, and the doorbell rang. And I went to the door, and there was a young man, in full chauffeur's livery. He had on the hat with the bill and buttons on his jacket, and he had a package in his hand. And he said, are you Dorothy Chatterton? And I said, yes. And he said, Mr., and I can't remember his name, it was Isaac something, wanted you to have this for Christmas. And what? You know, I couldn't imagine. Anyway, he was serious, and he said, Mr. So-and-so's out in the limousine, but he can't walk very well. He didn't want to come up. I said, well, tell him thank you so much. And I took the package in, and it was a nice little gift box full of cheeses and salami and that type of thing. And there was a note in with it, and it said, Merry Christmas to the best wrong number I ever got in my life.
So nice.
He said, enjoy the treats. And I want you to know that I enjoyed that call tremendously. So that was my wrong number experience.
Grandma, really quick, just for for us that don't know, do you want to explain how the switchboard worked? I've heard you explain
In Pocatello, you had to be a certain size. When they interviewed you for the job, they'd have you reach up, and if you couldn't touch the line up there, they couldn't hire you because you couldn't work on the switchboard, and I could just barely touch it. So they hired me, and I made $33.10 a week. That was riches. And so the switchboard was a big, long board, probably as long as, it was probably 20 feet long, and there were sections in it, and it was black, and there was a little light and a hole by the light and the number above it. And I had on earphones, and I'd plug into a light that lit up and say, number please, and they'd say 2686J or something like that. And I would say thank you and plug the other part of the cord into 2686J. So I connected them. And the J, there was the number 2686, and then there was A and, I don't know, 2 or 3 alphabet. And the party line, there'd be 3 or 4 of us on the same line. And so if they were talking on the line, you couldn't get in. Anyway, you'd put it in and then ring, and then ring. And if they wanted long distance, you'd put them into the long distance bank. But it was fun. Sometimes I felt like I was dancing in my chair because ring, ring, put in, put in, put in, put in, put in, ring, ring, ring. You know, it was kind of fun. And I walked home every day for lunch. And my mom and I had a secret code. I would plug into her and say, number please. And she'd say, you have the wrong number or something. And that meant that no, Doyle didn't send a letter that day. And if she said the other thing, I knew I had a letter from Doyle. So that was a fun part of the job.
Fun. So
and
did you listen to people's conversations?
You could, but you could be fired if you did. They had monitors that listened. One police calls, so you had to listen to them. And that got interesting. Mm-hmm. I heard some pretty rotten calls. But anyway, I made $33 a week. And when the week after I got out of high school, my first weekly board and room rent was due. And so I gave my dad $3.10. I had to give him 10% of my check
To live at their house.
to live at their house. And when I got a little raise, I had to pay a little more. Children weren't mollycoddled in those days. You know, you paid your own way, like with the paper route and buying my own clothes through high school and everything. And I didn't think it was mean or anything. I just thought that's what everybody did.
That's neat. Do you want me to tell you what else some of these things say?
No, I think we've gone long
Done.
enough,
Okay.
haven't we? Isn't it about a half an hour?
Yes.
I love all you guys out there. Thank you for listening to my, not television, but my acting debut.
Oh, I never know how to stop this.
Please stop it. I don't want them to watch me all day.
Let's see. Oh, stop. There we go.
Okay.
I'm like, I don't know. Okay, and then I'll take the.
I was going to tell you Monday night. It was nice.